There, that way we don't.
Oh, and to project, I guess I should plug in.
Oh, right. Yep, forgot about that. Yep. Yep.
Should be good. All right.
Back on your. May need to share desktop again.
Okay.
Back on your camera.
You know what? It might not like when I go full screen. I bet that's the case. Because that creates another Mac desktop.
Hmm. Forgot about that.
There we go. Different set of speakers.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're still streaming from your camera.
Okay. Now I'm going to try screen share. Instead of doing a screen, let's specifically do the app. Oh, but then if I switch over, it's not going to work.
We've done this before for the same configuration, right? All right, went black there. Now it's.
Now, what do you see?
I'm seeing
the camera. This camera.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what will work better probably is if we go here, and instead we're going to share that one up there, which is this one. There's nothing sensitive up there now.
Yeah. All right. Now we've got the desktop view.
And so now you got the slides coming over, right?
Yep.
And I think I can't present it, but I'm going to try and we'll see. See what happens if I. That's working, isn't it? Yeah. You're getting the full view.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Even if I come here and go there, yeah, that's good. That's working, isn't it? I need my mouse to make it big. Maybe we'll go there. No, I don't need that. Let's hide all this. Oh, no. Don't tell me I just dropped that hangout.
No, still see it.
I'm still here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Oh, good, because the screen's out in a different one. Okay, good. Okay. Cut. And present, and I'll go get the crew.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Which way's better? That way or that way?
That way.
That way?
A little less glare.
Okay, good. All right, think we're ready?
Yep.
All right.
You're all set.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, braving the storm outside. Sounds like some crazy weather on the way over. So this is our meetup, the Nova meme for Mongo, Express, Angular, Node, really all things JavaScript end-to-end. It's kind of what we're about here with a good dab of cloud on the side. We've talked about AWS and various cloud technologies a chunk of the time too. And Doug Toppin and I co-host the meetup. And we've done lots of different things. We're going on our in our third year now. Yeah. Going on our third year of the meetup meeting, so and going well. So we like to try and take topics from all over and do some on Mongo backend database, app server, which is mainly Node, Express, those kinds of things, and then Angular. And we're not necessarily exclusive to Angular, although with all the stuff going on this year, we're pretty heavily focused on it. So what we're planning on doing for this next 4 months, so June, July, August, and September, meeting on the 3rd Tuesday of each month, is here at Missouri, there's a group of us building a mobile app, and we've just built it with Ionic 1, an Angular 1, and we're actually getting ready to put that in the App Store and the Play Store next month. So it does retirement planning, so it'll be a free app. So it's going to be called Plenty, P-L-Y-N-T-Y. I'd love it if folks would check it out when it comes out. We'll certainly put it out on the Novamine and let folks know. But we've been working hard on it for about 6 months now. It takes a fresh approach to retirement planning. It'll save you a lot of money, help you retire more comfortably. But we've been using Ionic 1 for doing that, and we're very excited about Ionic 2 and really everything that represents, which is not just Ionic 2 and kind of a fresh rewrite of that framework, but it's Angular 2, which a lot of folks are choosing to develop in TypeScript to do that, which is a more typed optional, but really the intent is to be typed and get more towards classes and things like that, hopefully a more productive environment for coding. And certainly Google, with a lot of the push behind Angular 2, not you, Google, is really pushing to try and make Angular that much easier to learn and to be very good at. And so we're very excited about that as well. So we're planning on probably rewriting our app in the fall in Ionic 2. And to get there, we'd like to go through a learning curve. Our development team is going through a learning curve to be able to do that well. And so the learning curve we've outlined that we're in the process of going through is first learning ES2015, which is the same thing as ES6. It used to be called ES6, but recently the ECMAScript and the foundation manages that decided to go to a year mode instead, so it's ES2015, which is the biggest jump in JavaScript, going from ES5 to ES6, but it's the biggest jump for many, many years back, so a lot of changes in it. And really just getting some of the core new things in the language that you want to get used to. It's hard to jump into a language if you don't understand some of the syntax and some of the things that they're doing, and a little bit of what's going on underneath the hood. And so that's what we're going to be going through tonight. Then next month we'll do pretty much the same thing, but do it on TypeScript and be going through TypeScript and see what that's like. And then the month after that, we're going to focus on Angular 2 and just dive into some sample applications and walk through code on Angular 2 end to end. And then the month after that, we'll go into Ionic 2 and actually build in mobile apps. And so with Ionic, if anybody doesn't know, it basically wraps an Angular application and can produce the binaries that you need to upload to the App Store and the Play Store to look like a native application. Yep.
Just going to mention something on that. People want to get used to Ionic 1. There's an EDX course, the mean stack. They'll take them through Mongo, Node.js, Angular, and Ionic 1. I believe it's the September 17th you get credit for it.
Cool. If you put that in the Nova meme on our meetup page, there's a forums, and love it if you would be willing to just post that in there with a link to it.
I'll do that within the next few days.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's excellent.
No problem. I just thought I mentioned because.
Yeah.
Also, I assume you guys are videotaping this?
We are.
Okay, good.
Doug puts it up on, it's a Hangout on Air, which then records it for us automatically on YouTube. And so there's a YouTube link for all our past meetups that we've done. So you can go to the meetup, and usually if you look at the forum for any of the message threads for any of the individual meetups, you'll come across Doug who publishes the YouTube link.
There's a meetup. Off the meetup page, there's a pages link. Under the pages link, there's a thing that links to all our previous recordings.
Yeah, no problem. There was something else I was thinking of. I'll tell you later. It was just something else.
Cool. So, yeah, Ionic's a way of wrapping, and then also it uses underneath the hood something called Cordova, which gives you access to like the phone and the GPS and things like that that you would want access to when you're building a mobile application. So that'll come 3 months from now. So, how many folks have been using JavaScript actively?
Bits and pieces of it. I've been taking Udemy. I've been looking at Udemy courses. They get a lot of JavaScript tutorials.
Cool. Excellent. And then ES6. Anybody actively coding in ES6 yet? Not yet. So neither are we. And so I'm kind of up here facilitating, and I'm going to walk us through material. But this is just material that I'm learning too. So I'm not an expert in this, and that's going to go really for the next 4 months. And so I really encourage folks to bring your laptop, open your laptop, plan on working through things at a slower than typical pace. So if you want to grab something and actually try it out on your laptop as we go through over the next few months, definitely do that. Next month, we can definitely get TypeScript up and running. Month after that, Angular app. And if you wanted to come in with a laptop and with the goal of leaving with having some Angular 2 code running and having a sense of understanding of how it works. And then that last month, same thing for Ionic, that would be great. And at the same point, we might go through some stuff in here, and we'll hit various topics. Someone might understand, some aspect of promises better than I do. I definitely kind of like to open it up, and we can have a little conversation and learn from each other to a certain degree. But I'll try and facilitate us and keep us going if need be. So, I don't know, kind of thoughts. Is anybody else using Angular? Yeah, yeah. So a chunk of folks. What kind of stuff are you all doing with Angular?
Well, we're still on the Angular 1.6. We haven't migrated to 1.6. Like it's primarily like mostly UI grid stuff and everything. The Angular UI grids.
UI what?
UI grid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Yeah. What kind of app are you building? What does it do?
Well, ours is the company that I work for is K12. So we are into online education. So
right.
the application that we're building is where we display student information like add student to classrooms and stuff.
Excellent. So, what else? Who else is building stuff with Angular? What are you guys doing?
It's an application for job seekers. So
Okay.
it's kind of communication tool between job seekers and career counselors.
Cool.
So we started doing an Ionic application, but that kind of got sidetracked due to other priorities. But I've done an Ionic app on the side. So definitely interested in the 2.0 stuff. So
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the components page, and if you've been to that, but the components they've got for Ionic 2, especially they've got like a select, they've got, what else do they have? It's a calendar picker, and a few things that, you say, oh, it's a calendar picker. But I mean, if you need to use that, that can be a real showstopper in terms of the user experience. And so, and then just everything works so much better. The Apple stuff, the iOS stuff really looks like more like native iOS, and Android doesn't feel like an afterthought. It's using material design and stuff like that from the ground up. So we're very excited about it. So.
One quick question. There's something I would like to understand is what's your stack? I mean, I heard Angular and Ionic, but what's the back end? Is it what database are you using? What are you using? Node.js?
Yep. So we're using and we've got half a dozen different projects here using different flavors. So in some cases here at Missouri, we've got some backends that are using JBoss and using REST services, that are hosted off JBoss, and some folks do Tomcat. We've got some Node.js stuff. We got Node.js that's just plain Node.js with Express. Red Hat, who we're a partner with, bought a company called Feed Henry, and it's a Red Hat mobile platform. And so Cyrus is doing some work with Feed Henry right now and getting into that. They're trying to rebrand that to Red Hat Mobile. And then I'm using a framework called Loopback, which was just bought by IBM about 6 months ago, where you can kind of define, if anybody's familiar with Hibernate, anybody familiar with Hibernate? So Hibernate, you define a model, and Hibernate is going to pretty much generate your SQL for you and do your object relational mapping. Loopback, you define a model, but you do it in JSON and a JS file, and it's going to define your backend connection. So if it has connectors to Mongo as well as other relational databases, but also then develops, it's got a framework called Swagger that they've built in that'll generate your whole REST API and do kind of a vanilla CRUD API for create, insert, update, and delete. And so we use that as well. And there's some other folks that are coming out with similar kinds of frameworks. Swagger is a really interesting thing if folks are into Node and understanding that. It'll do an awful lot for you. And there's other products out there that will do your REST API or help you do a lot of the coding for you. And a lot of them use Swagger in one way or form underneath the hood. So. Cool. All right. What were you guys? You said you were building a document, right? Kind of a
Yeah, we have a
content management
product information manager.
Yeah. Cool.
Retailers use that sell millions of things,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of them.
Yeah. And you guys are using Angular on the
So
front
we're-
with the Java backend right now?
It's got like dashboard pages with widgets. So we're starting to replace JSPs and things like that with
Cool.
the widgets.
Excellent.
Extra.
Okay, cool. And that goes too. I'll try for the TypeScript when we go out. I've kind of gotten a feel for an outline here. And at the end of the evening, you can tell me if this outline works well for you. If it is, we'll do something with TypeScript. And my goal then would be to get it out like a week or two ahead of time. And that way, if other folks are interested in a particular area or something, you can come in and it could be a little more discussion-oriented. More discussion-oriented and less lecture. I think it always works better in the long run for some topics. So, cool. All right, well, let's hop in and kind of go through. So ES6, and I've been using Pluralsight for a couple things. Been using books online, just trying stuff and writing code as we're going through stuff. But I definitely like the Pluralsight courses a lot. They're kind of my favorite for the online education type stuff. So those have been helpful. So one of the first things when we're talking ES6 is that we really want to look at compatibility of, what supports where from a compatibility perspective. If I can get this to display. There we go. And so as we go in here, and I'm going to make it a little bigger. It's a lot of content. But can you guys sort of read that? Is that all right? Okay. So this is my current browser. I'm running the latest, not beta, but the latest version of Chrome here. And these are a lot of the ES6, and even though they're supposed to, I think we're supposed to call it ES2015, they still call it ES6 most of the time, and that's pretty much interchangeable. So these are really a lot of the new features within the language, and we're going to walk through a lot of these. And then as you're coding, you want to be compatible in your target platform. So when we're talking about JavaScript, there's lots of different platforms. We could be running desktop browsers. So we had desktop browsers over here, and so you've got IE, the new Microsoft Edge browser, Firefox, Chrome, Safari. And I will put these slides up online too, so you can be able to find stuff easily. So we got Safari. I have no idea what WK is. You can click on it, but then I'd have to resize the screen. Our server runtimes, Node. I'm not familiar with EchoJS. Anybody with EchoJS or PJS know what that is? No. And then mobile, we've got Android 4.4, 5.0, 5.1, iOS 7, 8, and 9. And so you can see things like Node 6 has got pretty decent compatibility across the board. That's in beta right now. That's not out yet. But certainly once we run Node 6, then we'll be able to use a lot of stuff just right out of the box. iOS 9, a lot of features are working there. Android, which is interesting, doesn't have a lot yet coming up. I don't know about Android 6. And so what do you do if you want to deploy to like an Android browser and you want to be compatible? Does that mean that you just can't use ES6? And so the answer turns out to be no. There is a way to do that. And so we can use these compilers, which are sometimes called transpilers or polyfills. And these are all ways of taking ES6 code that you're going to write and then outputting either at compile time or at runtime ES6 code, ES5 code. So it'll be backwards compatible for whatever environment you're running in. And so for the purpose of our roadmap that we're looking at going to Angular 2, which is going to run then inside of Ionic 2 for our mobile apps. That's like our primary thing. And most of the training and documentation and the stuff you'll find online to learn Angular 2, they're actually using TypeScript. And so TypeScript with Core.js is acting as a polyfill. And so it's going to provide a lot of that capability for us. So we'll be able to write in Angular 2, write in TypeScript, and once we get that spun up, it's going to run in an ES5 environment for us. And so let's look at a lot of these things that you notice that says, like, here we've got 12 of 15, and here it says 4, 4, 4, 5. What does that mean, 12 of 15? This is the spread operator. We'll learn what the spread operator is in a minute. And if I click that little down arrow, and I'll make this even a little bit bigger. Hopefully y'all can read that. So this spread operator is saying with arrays and function calls, with arrays and array literals. So this is a new ES6 feature, the spread operator. And that 12 of 15, where were we? ES6. 12 of 15, that's Clojure. 4 of 15, this is TypeScript. So this would be if our target environment is Angular 2, and we're going to use TypeScript, then it would be over here. So we could use the spread operator in these situations, but we could not use the spread arrays and spread operator with sparse arrays and array literals. And if you're kind of going, what is that? What is a sparse? Well, we could go Google it and look it up, but also if you hover over the C, it's actually going to give you the actual test that was run in JavaScript to do permanent compatibility. So it's also a good way to see, all right, there's a spread, which is this dot, 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 and they're passing an empty array there with 2 values. And if this return value is 0 and 1, well, anyway, if that returns true, then it's going to be compatible. If not, it's not going to. And so that's a way of seeing what's going on. And so essentially, this column with my current browser, all they're doing in each of these cells is they're running whatever that test is on this hover of the C, and they're seeing if I have compatibility. So that's good. Does that mean if I'm running something like, and some of these things are combinable too, so maybe if I did need to really want to use some of these features, which you probably don't have to, then maybe you would use like Babel or Tracer as a transpiler that's used. So Tracer is the one put out by Google. Babel's the one that really came out and really gained market share early on as the transpiler. I think many folks still use. I don't know. I haven't seen market share. And then TypeScript I know about. I don't know really anything about Clojure or ES6 shim. So have folks heard about it? Have folks heard of Babel before? Is that name? You've seen that in the news? That's about the extent of it. And so that one's reasonably easy to get to work. But say you wanted to do work in Node, then and get ES6 code to run in Node for 3, which is like the latest that AWS supports in a lot of their servers out of the box, then you would have to probably use Tracer or Babel for doing that. Questions on compatibility and how all that works? But this is, go ahead.
Babel and like in WebStorm.
What's that?
Like there's always a message coming up.
Yes.
WebStorm, Babel can take care of this for you.
So basically, I believe what that is it's saying when you tell your project that you want your project's language to be ES6 and not ES5, then it's offering to install a WebStorm plugin that's Babel. Behind the speeds, it's going to run Babel for you as you go. So you don't have to set up otherwise you'd have to set up like a gulp task or a grunt task or something like that to do that compiling for you as you're saving. And since it's got a watcher on it as well, as you make changes to your code in almost near real time, it's going to go ahead and do that transpilation process to spit out ES5 code so that you can then test it.
Will it do it like it does TypeScript?
I believe
Does
so.
it make
I
it-
actually haven't used it, but that would be my expectation as to what it should be doing. So yeah, some of the stuff I've been working with initially, and the tests I'm going to walk through initially, I'm using Tracer. Really, I think next month we'll get into TypeScript, and we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper then into this whole transpiler issue and see if we're using. My expectation is that when we get into TypeScript, we'll just use that and that'll be it, and we won't come back to this. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll get into that and we'll say, hey, no, we do need to come back and use Tracer or Babel for something else. So what we're going to be going into tonight, we will talk about default function parameters, REST parameters, a spread operator, object literals, for of loops, which is a new thing. Octal and binary, I'm not going to really cover because that's kind of a one-off, but if we just want to take a quick look in here in passing. So octal now has this ability, if I want to specify a particular variable to be octal, I use a 0 and an O. And then anything after that is assumed to be octal, so base 16. And then same thing for binary. If I do a 0B, that's assumed to be binary after that. And so like binary 1, 0 is 2. Pretty straightforward. Template literals we will cover. I'm not going to do regex. I don't even really know. And a lot of these things I can click on those and you probably go to the features. Destructuring, we'll touch on that. The new target, we'll touch on that quickly. The constant block level with declarations, that's a big deal. So that's the first thing I've got stuff on. Arrow functions, class, super, generators, we'll touch on. I didn't go a lot into the new updates to map setup. There's a weak map, weak set. If you're familiar with a lot of the Java collections API, it's really bringing a lot of that to bear. So I kind of figured a lot of folks could kind of dive into that themselves. I'm going to touch on promises have been around in JavaScript for a while. A lot of times we've used a library called Q to provide promises within our JavaScript, but now it's an ES6 native feature. But again, just because it's ES6 native, you have to actually be in an environment that's going to support that nomenclature, but that's definitely where we're going. And so definitely excited to be using out-of-the-box promises where we can. Did not do much. So a lot of these get to be a little more esoteric in my opinion. So I've done a lot of those. But anyway, this is obviously, not only is it good for compatibility, but it's a good reference. What are all the new things in ES6 that matter, and what are they? That's where I have been starting. Questions on that as we get into it? And so the latest browsers do have pretty good compatibility. Those are coming from like that 96. Where do we get that? So the latest Edge browser, that's not 96. It says it's 90%. Firefox is 90%. Latest Chrome is 52% or 98% compatible. So, but obviously, most times we're writing apps, we want them to run in a bunch of different browsers. So that's where the transpiler is also nice, because then if you've got a transpiler and you just stay within that and you're processing that through to the browser, it deals with a lot of the cross-browser compatibility issues. And you don't have to deal with those.
Doug, did you mention modules, and are you going to cover modules?
And I'm going to cover modules. In fact, it's going to be one of the first things we do. So we are going to do, so we're going to go over a bunch of the new ES6, and then all my examples I did, I just ended up putting them in modules right off the bat. And you can run a lot of the stuff in Node. You can run it in the browser directly if you're in Chrome. But the way I kind of broke it out into modules, so you're going to see I'm going to jump back and forth between WebStorm and the browser, and that's how we're going to look at working code. I think that's more fun than looking at just slides. Slides get pretty boring pretty quick. So we'll go through modules and classes, some new types. We're going to hit on promises. I didn't get too deep into that, so we'll see. I think I've got a lot of stuff here, and so we'll see how far we get. So to start out, let's go ahead and take a look at what I'm doing in WebStorm, and we'll get to the let constant block scoping, which is a good place to start. So I don't know how to make this a lot bigger over here on the right. I don't think I have to. I think really what you want to see is the code. Everybody can see the code pretty well. All right. So I set up a simple HTML page here. And again, we could be running directly in the console if we wanted to. And I just kind of decided this was a good way to show it and do it a web page-based approach. And so I'm using the tracer compiler here and importing that script. And then I'm using the ES6 module loader. Tracer itself has a module capability as well, but it wasn't behaving as I was running through and testing it. There were some things that it wasn't quite doing as to spec for the ES6 spec as the module loader was. So both of these you can get by going to, I never spelled tracer right, T-R-A-C-E-U-R. There we go. So Tracer, you can come here, and these are both GitHub projects, and so you can go through, and there's some good explanation. And there's lots of information, like in the getting started area of this, not only in different ways, so you can run just at the command line in real time. You can set it up to use Node, and then you can set it up to use a web page. And I think, yeah, here's where I got the link here. So you could download it and just have it local if you want to, and bundle it with your application. Just for the purposes of this, I just am referencing it directly there. And I did try this browser system in the Bootstrap, and that works. It's just if you're following along with the spec in terms of how things like module loading is supposed to work. There were some very subtle things like modules are supposed to be hoisted, and we'll take a look at that. And this one wasn't hoisting the module declaration. Not something that's probably going to kill you, but for the purposes of the lecture, I swapped that out and I put in this module loader. This browser system in the Bootstrap, I think, might be fairly new. I'm not positive, but I think they are. And so, here we go. And so this is the ES6 module loader polyfill that provides ES6 module support in an ES5 environment. And so what does all that mean? Well, if folks have written a lot of, say, any kind of JavaScript-based single-page application, anybody use any other frameworks besides Angular, like React or stuff like that?
XJS.
XJS, cool. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay. So any of those environments, you end up with, I mean, I think our app right now has about 30 lines of script imports because you're importing all your different scripts on all your different pages. And managing that is not terrible, but this is a lot cleaner. So I'm going to import just this up here. And if I had module loading and I had ES6, I wouldn't even need these. The standard ES6 line to import something is just system.import. And then I'm going to start with a base JavaScript class that I'm going to import. And I decided to put that in my JS folder up here. And so we'll have that base JS. So let's take a look at what that's doing. All right, so right now I just got it doing a console world. And the way I've done this then is it's kind of nice because I broke out all the different things. I thought it was nice. You guys can see that. So, but I thought we could go through this way. And so we're just going to walk through a lot of different examples. And then I've got different modules here for all these different examples. We can look at a little bit of code. We can talk about it. And then we can see what it does. In most cases, I'm just printing out a console log there. So I'll be bouncing over to here and going here and going to here, console. And I'm not even putting anything on the web page. So if I reload this, all it's doing is saying hello world from a module. So basically in the index page, I'm loading my base.js, and all this is saying is that when I load the module, it's going to execute the code that's in there. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Feel free to pause me anytime, and we can have open-ended conversations on these topics. So let's talk about the let example. What is let? So the standard way of declaring a variable that we're used to is we're used to declaring a var. And so now there's this new keyword that's let instead of var. And why do they want another keyword? And my understanding of it is that they still want to have backward compatibility, right? So you still want all these new features you're bringing out. You're trying to look for areas to make the language more productive. So a lot of that is going to reflect things that are popular in C# and Java and typing and things that are good in terms of object-oriented design. And they're trying to bring those things into the JavaScript arena, but they don't want to break your own code. You still want to be able to take ES5 code and you should be able to run it and it should work. No problem. You can't have any breaking changes. And so the let keyword is going to behave differently than the var keyword. And if they made the changes just directly to var, it would have broken a lot of existing ES5 code when they brought it along. So that's why we have the let. So what does the let do that's different? The main thing that it's doing is that it's really honoring the block scoping of a variable. So right here, if I declare within a block a variable company ID, this is going to print out and it's going to say company ID equals 12. And so let's just take a look at that. And so I should be able to reload. And so company ID equals 12. And one thing that's interesting is you notice on, I'm just going to back up for one thing here. So this console, log hello world from module, that's the very first line of code in my base.js module. But if you look over here, it's printing it last. And the reason is because there is module hoisting. So basically, whenever you do an import statement in your module, that's going to get hoisted to the top and run before any other lines of code in your application, which also means, and we're going to see in a minute, you will export either various variables or functions or whatever into this module or into this space scope. And so those are going to be available. So up here, I could reference something that was exported from the let example, and it would work. So back to here. It's a shame that it doesn't stay big. But if we change this, so we saw that printed out, company ID equals 12, and that first there. But if I go now I actually get a syntax error or an exception being thrown. And so now it's actually trying to reference this company ID. The other thing that module loading will do, and according to spec, not all the different, like this is another thing that didn't work when I just used that tracer. It didn't enforce this exception. But when I did the let here, what was I saying? So basically this variable only exists within this block scope with the let keyword. With the var keyword, it's allowed to leak out into the scope that it's calling it from. But the let keyword will enforce that. So that means I can define different variables, and I could define company ID up here as 15. And if I define company ID as 15 there, what's going to print out here? It's going to be 15, right? So it's almost like within this scope, company ID is really a different variable within that scope. And so that's key. That's the way we expect Java to behave. That's how Java and a lot of like .NET would behave that way. And so here, the let keyword is giving us that solid block scoping. Same thing here. I got stock ID equals 55. Now stock ID is going up to 10. And when I log it out here, I see that I get that 55. Oh, I do if I fix that again. So I need to go back here to allow that to work. And so I said stock ID of 55. If I were in here to put in that loop and print it out, then I would see it each time it printed out and it would increment throughout. And then there's also another keyword that they provide is a constant. So this constant, INF percent equals 0.1, and that came out there as 0.01. If I come in here and I try and not define that constant, see I'm getting a syntax error in WebStorm. And if I run that, I'm going to get an error basically saying that constant variables must have an initializer. So it's not going to let you not initialize a constant. If I make that again 0.1, and then I come in here and I try and say INF equals 10, and I come back here, and it should say in here that you're not allowed to reassign a value to a constant. So it's enforcing a constant to actually be a constant, which is a really cool thing. So let's go ahead and get rid of that.
Can you make an equal sign?
What's that?
Equal sign?
Where's that?
21.
Oh, thank you.
What's the limits of constants for now? Can you make anything a constant?
I believe so. Like what?
Like a function or?
That's a good question. I'm sure you probably can. Let's try it really quick. Here, we'll do it when we do the arrow functions in the next one, because that'll be a good place to stick it in.
Was the whole like let thing to like?
Yeah, actually, no. If we just
phase
we
out
should be able to do it.
or-
Function and have this return 0.1. And that's going to print my function. Well, let's actually call the function. See if I can do that. Is that doable? Yep. So constant can be a function. Now I could probably, I can't change that function though. And no, you can't change the function definition. It's going to be a pointer to that function. And you can't change the pointer to that function. So it's going to have to stay that way. Yep. Good. Good question.
And I guess was that kind of like? I guess are they going to try to replace the fuse with lets now? Is that like the?
Yeah, basically when you go to ES6, use lets across the board instead of bars. And the other thing that let does is it changes the and block scoping and error functions, all those things. They're trying to fix the this variable. So when you call a function and then you use the word this inside of it, you're basically referring to the scope of that function itself. But when you use a let keyword, when you use an arrow function, is there anything else like that? Possibly. Those are the two big ones. Then it's going to refer from the calling context that's actually calling the function is what this will refer to. And that's a major change as well. That's a really big deal. Yeah. So
Will there be any implied typing like in TypeScript?
I don't know. No, I don't think there's any implied typing in ES6. Yeah, ES6 is strictly untyped, not typed. So you have to bring in something like TypeScript, which is a superset. So have to do that. Let's take a look at our arrow example. So this is the new arrow function. And so when you read this var get price, this is saying get price is essentially going to be a function that in this case is going to result in 3.147. So that's the same thing as saying get price equals, probably that's pretty helpful actually if they did that. So that's the same thing as saying var get price 2 equals function. And then passing it and say. So it is the same, although again, the this keyword, if I do a this in here, and we could play with that, but if I do a this inside of here and say I had a property, it's actually going to print out and I get a console.log of that this dot structure. It's going to be this will refer to the scope of this function itself. Whereas if I call get price here, it's gonna, and I pass in a parameter, I can pass in, this is passing in empty parameters. If I pass in a parameter there, this is going to, within the scope of this function, it's going to be referencing the calling context of the environment that was calling the function. And so that's a really big change and a big difference between the two. But this is just saying console.log. This is saying that get price type is, so what's type of get price going to be? I'm not calling get price. I'm just saying get price itself. So this is going to be a double. What's get price with no parentheses?
Object function.
Function. Good function. Yep. And then this one here is showing, and so you can use var or let, and they're going to have again the differences that I described before, but it's just a variable now that's pointing to a function instead of pointing to a property or what have you, a variable. And so this is a way of passing in multiple parameters into an arrow function. If I only have one parameter, I don't need the parentheses. So if I was just passing local price, passing in count, and I just want to count times 4 and there was no tax, I don't have to have the parentheses. But if you have 0 or more than 1, you have to have the parentheses there. And this is just saying the same thing as return, and then doing that count times 4. A couple other little things. This arrow function can't be on the next line. It has to be on the same line. Whereas a lot of other things, JavaScript white space doesn't care. With the arrow function, it does. Did I uncomment the base one? I think I did.
Is constant a let? Like, is it working a let or is it working more?
Say it again?
Does constant work?
Constant works like a let in terms of this scope. Yeah. It will work like a let. All the new things work that way. All right, so let's go back here. And so we should see this say the prices should be type of as a function. Price there, get price should return our 347. And this calc price one should take 2 as count, 0.7 as tax. And so 2 times 4 is going to be 8 plus a 7% tax that it's going to add there. And there you go. So price is a function. There's the answer. And that was, is that 8 times 0.7? Seems high. We could go look. So, all right, 2 times 4. Oh, it's 1.7%, not 1.07%. That would be or a typical answer. There you go, 8.56. It feels better from a tax perspective. All right, so what are we going to next? Let's go. Is this helpful to folks? We can readjust here midstream if you want.
How long has all this been? Since 2015.
Yeah, beginning early, really 2014. You know, it's just how do you run it? So the spec's being worked on for a long time. In fact, they had ES. There was another, you know, ES4 failed, right? They had ES3. They tried to do ES4. Other people know that because I was doing Java all this time, so no, I'm not a good history buff on them. But ES4, they failed to get adoption by industry, but browsers really have to adopt it. And then they did ES5, which I think was a smaller change, and so all those features were a change. And then I think they came back to ES6 and said, let's really go do all this. And in my opinion, I think the transpilers like Babel have really allowed it to catch on, and now the developers really want it, and so now the browser wars don't hurt, right? The fact that IE is driving hard and Firefox and Chrome are competing, they all want to support that. And then Node coming out on the server side. So I think all those different factors coming together, and the JavaScript engines are providing it. All right, so that was Arrow. What was default's pretty straightforward. We won't waste a lot of time on this. So within a function, you can now specify a default. So if I wanted tax equal just 0.057, this one's a little bit more. This default value, I can actually use a variable itself. So this actual function call and these parameters, it's like having their own block scope within the function parameters themselves. And so I can do price times 0. And so here I'm doing console log. Oh yeah, it's printing this price plus the tax, but when I pass this in, I'm only passing in 5. I optionally could say if I wanted a tax rate of something other than 0.7, I could pass in 0.5. But if I don't pass in anything, then it is going to use the default value. And so pretty straightforward. What else is interesting about that? So a couple interesting things. If you use arguments length, is it right? It's console arguments. That. I'm passing 1, and so basically, and when we get into rest and spread parameters, and you'll see that in a minute, we can pass in different numbers of parameters, and it's changing stuff up here. So with the default, I don't have to pass all the parameters in. Arguments length is always going to be the number of parameters that you're passing in. Regardless of what's happening, it's the number you're passing in. And really, I read something recently said the best practice is not to use arguments that length anyway. So there you go.
Does the order matter? Like, can I do tax equals price first? Or
Order definitely matters. Yes. Yeah. This is going to be, this position is going to go whatever is there. In terms, that's the calling order. That's what you're asking.
yeah.
Yeah.
The definition change the
Yeah. Well, you're not telling it here or anything. All you're doing is giving the first
I
parameter.
mean, the definition. I did
Oh,
tax
here?
equals price.
Yeah. If I did that, then tax is going to go first. And so if I do that, that's a good question.
Well, I did tax equals price first.
I don't think that will work. So let's do that.
I thought it's a big.
Like that, and then let's pass in. Now we've got to pass something in here. So let's pass in an undefined and see what happens. Not a number, so it doesn't like that. And that's probably because I would think that taxes, so if we did that and we weren't referring to price, and I wanted to do that, yeah, that's fine. So the fact that the order does here matter, I can't reference property before, because it's essentially using that let structure. And so it's enforcing that, and it's not doing hoisting. It didn't even say it was undefined. It said it was not a number, which I think was because it was not hoisting it within the scope of that property. Good question. Next one. Rest and spread example. Okay. So I don't know. I've done some R programming recently, and it was amazing. A lot of stuff in R. Anybody done R? A little bit R. Cool. And so, did you ever see the rest and spread functions like this, with the ... the 3 ellipse, 3 dots?
Possibly.
Okay. So anyway, it's very interesting. There's an awful lot in common between R and R is a way of doing data analysis, and it's very common. Like in universities, a lot of the data science stuff is being done either using Python or R, instead of using statistical packages like Stata and stuff like that. And if you ever need to get into the data science arena and you're comfortable with JavaScript, just jump right into R, and a lot of it is pretty darn comfortable. Very interesting. So anyway, this var show categories is a function, so it's going to take this and the ... which is the rest operator, just means however many more parameters are given to me, soak them all, absorb them all. So you don't want to do this until the end because it's going to absorb everything, and then put them into an array. And so when we console log categories right here, and we're calling it with this, it's going to put search and advertising into an array. And so it's a good idea. Like if you're doing the console.log, you know, in a console.log, you can just do comma, 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 and it will keep concatenating everything nice and cleanly together for you. If you wanted to write your own console.log, you could do the ... categories and iterate over the array and print it out, and it would do it for you. You wouldn't have to worry about having, a function that actually took n parameters. or using args.length. So yeah, sometimes folks might use args to get around before the rest parameter existed. You don't have to do any of that anymore. This would be the nice clean way to do that. The spread parameter does just the opposite. So if I've got like an array, this function math will just find the maximum of an array that you put into it. So instead of me having to create an array and actually pass an array, it wants it as a series of parameters. So instead of me breaking this out and having to do prices 0, prices 1, prices 2 with commas in between, I can do this, pass it in, and it's going to break those out into individual parameters. And so we can see those two run. So yep, so the first one, it just put the first two into an array, and this last one, it found the largest of my array and kind of printed it out. So fairly straightforward. If you don't have anything here, it's kind of nice to know too. Anybody want to guess what that's going to do?
Empty array.
Great, empty array, which is nice because you can iterate over an empty array, and it's just not going to iterate because there's nothing in there, but I don't have to worry about my code breaking. So that's kind of nice. Next one. I know going through code and new code features is a little tedious. But I think it's pretty important because otherwise you can't just read the code that the new stuff that we're going through. So, so the literal. Oh, so this is cool, and there's a whole bunch of different variations on this, and I just didn't have time to put them all in here. But what this is saying is I've got two variables here, a price and a quantity, and I want to create this into an object. And so this is going to do it, and when it sees this this literal, it's going to look for a variable. I could use let as well, or var, and it's going to do now price colon 5.99 and quantity colon 10. I don't have to do that. And if I wanted to change, what else can I do with that? I can actually change those up as well. And this gets used later on when we get into classes and class definitions. They're using some of these features to make classes. They're using literals and templates underneath the hood to make these things happen. So if we do that.
So when you said change, do you mean like if you change price to another number, it would update it?
Well, yeah, it's just creating an object for me, but in the past I might have had to do like quote price like that. So I would have had to do that in the past. And I get the same thing. It's just saving me having to do that. And if I have lots of different objects and it can deal with nested objects and all kinds of stuff like that. And there's a lot more stuff it can do in terms of templates. So if you're trying to create an object representation of data that you have, dig deeper into object literals, and there's stuff there. The for of example, which I'm very glad to see. Love this thing. In fact, that is one of the things I miss the most when I'm not able to program in it. So it's just giving you a way to iterate over a collection. I usually use Lodash. Anybody use Lodash or underscore? Yeah, so I use Lodash or underscore all the time for this. So now it would be kind of native in the environment, and you won't need to do that anymore. So this is just going to iterate over this collection and print it out. Anybody want to take a stab at what that's going to do?
All the letters, maybe?
Yep, all the letters. Exactly. And so, yep. And then if I wanted to count them, I could even do like a count equals 0, count plus plus, and print out count. Tell me the number of letters. I think the spread operator too should work for that too. We should try that. I thought I heard that. I just haven't done that. We'll try it really quick. Yeah, so there's your printing out each of your things, bring over the letters. I think if I were to do,
Does it let you do like for there, open print item comma I, those print
for there, what's that?
like item comma index of like where you get the email for
Oh, I don't know.
Is it like
I don't know.
some of the flavors do that, other ones.
Yeah, item comment index or item square
Like-
brackets? No.
No, like in parentheses, item comment index maybe.
Oh, and then it will actually give you the index as it does it as it goes through? I don't know.
is 4 each like a standard ES5?
Like
No,
array,
just the
array
for
for each.
of would be the equivalent of a for each.
So it's gonna have
for each does, array dot for each gives you-
I don't even know where that page comes from. I just know it's there.
Yeah. Oh, come on. It's gonna take too long.
Yeah,
There we go.
Bash stuff is native. You're gonna end up using it that way.
Flat value of constant. Yeah, so var, they're using a let there. Let's see if I can see anything like that, what you just described.
What's that?
I don't see anything. But it's good. I mean, questions like that are great, right? That's when we dig in and go do new stuff.
It doesn't like assign a prototype to that item or something.
Oops. An item to the,
Like maybe if you log the item, it have something, a member like index or something attached to it.
oh, it's possible. If I print, I'm constantly in the log, how would I get the properties of it?
Well, also, what about object.keys? It'd be nice if that
If what's
the
that?
equivalent of object.keys.
Yeah, I don't know that one either.
We're just curious. I wonder if it jams something in there.
So it'd be great if you guys bring your laptops next month.
I have my laptop.
And as we do that, we can have a little break-off session of folks looking at that while we continue to go through. It'd be really fun.
Can this monitor handle different laptops or?
Yeah, maybe we'll just pass the HDMI cable.
I mean, at a time, so maybe we can like compare stuff if we get into discussions.
Yeah. What is that doing? Oh, that's just doing, oh, so this is doing our, okay, so yes, module example. I guess I should have done that further up. So what is this doing? So now we're importing the base module using the system. So that's that first one. I'm doing that in the index.html page. So this is importing the first module with this system import. But then from another module, when I'm actually in the module, I can import additional modules. So I can have this nested tree hierarchy of module imports that I'm doing. And what are we doing on the other side of an import? A lot of these, all I've been doing is using these to trigger it to run that script the first time. It's just loading the module, but I'm not really using any module behavior there, except that it's kicking off and it's running through that script, because I don't have anything there. So with this one, in our module example, this one's going to print out, this one's actually importing from another module, and it's going to import this thing. And this thing is something that's been exported. So in module 1, I would expect to see an export of project name. And so if I come in here, this is the module 1. And so I'm exporting a variety of things. I'm defining just some attributes. I got this that I'm in module 1. And here, exporting project ID. Everything has to be in curly braces unless you can have a default export. And if I do a default export and I don't specify what I want to import, it's going to pick up the default. There can only be one default export in a given module. Kind of makes sense. Otherwise, it would be the default. I can export multiple things like this. And I can export just properties. I can variables. I can also export objects. I could export functions as well. So that looks like So on this side, I can import project name. I think that's the default import that I'm pulling in. And if I didn't specify, I can do project name as, and I could change the name if I wanted to. Here I'm importing project ID as, and I'm changing the name ID. So down here I'm actually calling, printing this out as ID. Here I'm importing product 1 and product 2. And here I'm importing that function, print contents. And so I could do as print, and then I could change that here. This is then going to be a pointer to the function in that module. And this is actually a pointer. So if in module 1, later on I have a function before I call this function that changes what print contents pointed, redefines print contents as a different function, then that will be in sync. And in this module, I will actually call that changed function. So this is getting to be the way of trying to standardize all our different ways of, including code and merging code that's different between Node and Angular and seems like every other JavaScript framework. And so, yeah, if we run this. So I was saying I'm just printing out those various things, just different ways I was playing with getting it to do it. And this was calling that print method that I've got in module 1. The 99 Novamine that's the print contents. And the print contents is just doing this console.log and printing out those functions. So it was a very initial look at module imports. Okay. Thoughts, questions?
So if you wanted to not have to have the person import a bunch of things from the module, you would put them in the same class.
If you didn't want to have, you could return back an object, and then I could have an object that had a lot of methods to it, because each of my values of my properties with my object could actually be a function. So I could return back a system, and that could be an object. And so one attribute could be print, and print would actually point to a function. And so that would be one way I could map it and return back one thing, and then it would be whatever, if it was, let's say this was project instead of project name, could probably do that pretty quickly. Let's do that. So if I said project now is not, it's going to break it a little bit, not too much. Get rid of that. Let's get, we can leave that, it'll work. And then let's come up here and change project to be an object. And let's say its name. And this is going to be do it. And this I should be able to do as, I wonder if I can do this. I haven't tried this yet. Trying crazy things. No, it should give me a syntax error if I can't. No, I can't do that.
If the parentheses on it.
Oh, thanks. Now I'm hitting caps lock. No.
Yeah.
Shit doesn't like it though. I've got a syntax error.
The semicolon. So, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what that does. So now if I come back to module example, now it's not product name, import. It didn't say it was a default. Let's do that. So using it, so let's use it. This isn't like Unused import, I just tried to use it. Project print contents. Am I export? Oh, I'm not exporting it. I could have left the default in there. I'm not calling it do it, but oh, it's happy.
Does WebStorm do all that?
So what-
other
Hey, look at that, that works.
Yeah.
When you import, what's the import of the default?
What's that?
What is the import, when you import the default, you want the default
So if you
from the
want,
module, what is that?
I know I can get rid of the curly braces. Is that the only thing? Oh, and I think I can name that something different. So
So when you do that, you're getting the default.
yeah, and so if I get that out of the way here, so I'm going to call it the default. Everything's happy there. That's there. So that should still work. Oh. Yeah, and then I can call this something else. So project 2. Yeah, so basically this is like the as keyword there, and I don't have to tell it what I'm actually importing. I'm giving it whatever name I want. Whereas here, oops. So like this project ID has to be the actual string in the module importing from the exported project ID. Whereas I'm exporting project, but so it really doesn't know what I'm exporting or want to importing, so it's getting the default.
So the default is like.
What's that? Yes, exactly. Yep.
Module.
So what if there are two defaults?
What's that?
What if there are more than one default?
You can't. It'll give you an exception if you try and find a module. Because yeah, two defaults is two.
So then the code, like some kind of code migrator could migrate on existing.
Yeah, I think so.
Module.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And so I think then, so we had the module. But if I said, so now if I wanted to do console.log and do it, and so that should be project 2. Oh, look at that's pretty nice. WebStorm's doing that. Yeah, so do it's 33. So it's actually giving me that, it's calling that function. And so that's be your way of, I was trying to get a little bit to at the same time. If you wanted to have one thing that you were returning, and just one thing that you're returning and you want a lot of functions, then this would be a really nice way of doing it with that dotted notation. Work?
So you save. Saved about 6 characters.
Yeah, it's not as much the characters, it's really that this. So the reason they're really doing it is that this functionality now is the context you're calling from instead of the context of the function. And so it's the same thing. They can't change the behavior of function because that's going to break a bunch of code. So they're coming up with a new way of being able to manage the this character. And they just happen to save some character. And some people might say you should have come up with another keyword because the fat arrow is a confusing symbol.
So, advanced question. Is it, it sounds like it's slightly different from the way TypeScript does it.
I haven't gotten into that yet.
And CoffeeScript has arrow functions too. It has narrow arrow and thick arrow.
Oh, wow.
So in thick arrow, which is equal instead of a dash, it looks like it works like this. And then thin arrow in CoffeeScript seems more like TypeScript's arrow function.
And what does TypeScript's arrow function do?
It
Does
does
assignment
something
or-
like this.
Okay.
But you don't really, it's weird. I don't know if you've ever used filing.
Mhm.
It's like flow. It's like an asynchronous flow.
Mhm.
And you say flow, and then you have a function, and then you go then, and then, and then, and then.
Mhm.
It's like promises, but it's like managing promises really in parallel,
Okay.
in sequence. And I can't use TypeScript with it, with arrow functions, because then this is like some other kind of this.
Oh, interesting.
It changes it to underscore this.
Yeah. Huh. So
We'll next few weeks we'll see.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, where are we? See if we can't get through this. Oh, so class. Yeah, let's definitely go into classes, and then the last promise, and then we'll wrap it up. We won't go all the way to 9. That's too long. Let's take a look at the class example. So a few things here. So the most important thing to remember with JavaScript classes is that they're not Java classes. So we are getting this, class keyword in ES6. That's great, but we're still dealing with functions and prototypes. And so underneath the hood, that's still there, with the exception of now the this keyword's in there. And we also do have this constructor. So this constructor is a keyword. So it's not, in Java, that would be task, parentheses to get the constructor. In JavaScript, there's actually a constructor keyword, because that's the way they need to do it to get the language to work. I don't have any subclasses in here. I guess we could do a subclass really quick. That'd be good. So I define a class. You can't define properties within a class like you can in Java. That doesn't work. You can assign things to the this parameter in the constructor, but you're really having a collection of functions which we can call methods. And so this constructor is going to fire when I create a new task. If I do console log, task is a type of, let's see what that is. It's just going to be, you know that right off the top of my head, forgot. This is going to be type of object. I'm pretty sure that's function. But we'll see it again here in a minute. And then we've got this instance of, so we can see this instance of, which is an object, is going to be an instance of task. And then I can call task.showID, and it's going to call that method. Let's look at that really quick, and then let's make a subclass. Yeah, so task is just a type, it's just a function when I use the class keyword. It does do some things, though, that's a little bit different. There are a couple of restrictions on classes that you can't do that you can do with functions. And I'm blanking. Yeah, you can. You can actually create a static attribute on it, and you can have a static attribute within the. So that's a new thing you can do. And you can't, if you have a static attribute, you cannot call that on the object. You have to use the class for that. I'll have to put in my, I'll put it out on the meetup in terms of the others. Let's take a quick look at subclassing this. So if I save here a little space.
So you can only set this dot X inside the constructor.
That's correct. If I'm going to set a value. So let's do class.
Is that like the
Java.
recommended way, or
What's that?
Is that the recommended?
I haven't gotten that far yet. So class Java extends task. So I can do show ID as well, and I can make it do something else. Console log. Not 99. So if I do that, and task is type of task, let's do, let task equal here though, a new Java. All right, so now we're using the subclass. Everything else should still work. Let's do a couple things. Let's see if it's actually going to call the superclass's constructor. And let's see if we get out not 99, which essentially means we overrode the method that was in the superclass. Okay, and so task is still a type of function, constructing task, so I am calling the constructor. And I got the not 99, task is still an object, and task, which is an instance of Java, is still also an instance of task. So we're getting some basic inheritance that we're looking for, and I'll show you one gotcha really quick, so that hopefully it won't get you down the road. So now we want to override the constructor behavior, and will that work? Since I'm asking.
Yeah, you make it sound like it won't.
It won't work. So let's see it not work. Watch it work and I'll have a problem. There we go. Okay. Derived constructor, there you go. But it gives you a really nice error message. Derived constructor must call super. So whereas in Java, it's going to call super for you. Yeah. If it creates the default constructor, then if I hadn't run a constructor, it's creating a default constructor that will call super. But if I put in a constructor in there, I have to have a call to super, and now everybody's happy again. There is one other pretty interesting thing in here. It was new dot, what was it? No, new dot,
Is there a base class for all classes?
Huh?
Is there a base class for all functions?
No, it wasn't new dot function. It was new dot, I'm sorry, it wasn't type. What's that? ES6. Is he going to give it to me? Come on. I'll have to move on if I can't find it. But basically, there's a keyword in here that'll refer to the constructor that's actually getting called. And so if you want to see it, then I'll have to put that up there too. Sorry, I forgot that one.
Is it just constructed
What's that?
without the equipment?
No, it's a funky keyword because it's got new and a dot in it. The actual keyword is 2 words with a dot in between. I'll put that one on the message board too. What else did I have? I'll make a note in here.
Would it be this dot constructor?
No, it was definitely new. Find out what that is. What do I do for class instance properties?
So is there a base class for all classes? Or?
There's this base prototype, I think. Isn't there a base prototype for the function? I think so. Anybody? JavaScript? I don't think so. Maybe. I should write all these down.
We don't want to be Java programs.
What's that?
We don't want to be Java.
I know, but I get confused because, of course, I can tell you in Java there's definitely an object. Oh, and so this is showing out like class instance properties. So my constructor, I'm doing a this.location turn then. Here I'm actually, so I'm doing some where I've got the subclass and I'm doing the constructor, calling this. Now this.location here is going to return, give me the supers this.location, but now I'm resetting that to be this.location VA. So when I do project, so I create a new instance called a project, and now I can do project.location like you would kind of think of attributes, and that's how I set them up in the object. And then once you set them up in the constructor, then you could change them as well. So I could say project.location equals, let's try it real quick, see if all that works. Make sure that's true since I'm telling you. So I got Herndon, VA, which is interesting. And now if I did project location equals New Mexico, just to be different. Yeah, so I can kind of get properties that way, instance properties.
Is there like private and all that stuff too, and that back to?
I don't believe so. I haven't seen anything like that.
How do they do it in like these like closures right now to get?
I mean, if you only expose methods, there might be something with getting set in there too. I think if we go to, I haven't looked.
Like, right? Don't you for ES5? Don't you have to like make a closure or something to like provide like pseudo private stuff?
Yeah. Where are my slides? Oh, they're over here.
I usually do everything. So not that. I don't know. Just curious.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I was just looking really quickly. Super.
Is it that mu.target?
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
This is mu.
Yes.
Young eyes.
Awesome. Let's go see that really. That was in the class example, right? We were trying to play with that. Oh yeah, so if we do here we go. Console.log.
Is that already a target keyword?
Yeah. So we can do just like that. And that should print out the function definition that's actually, isn't that funky? Yeah. What did you like that? Unexpected token. Definitely didn't like that. Let's go look here. We won't spend too much time on it. Team constructor. That target equals function. I'm using, oh, you know what? It might be that I'm using Tracer, and Tracer doesn't support it, and so Tracer might be hosing me. And if I wasn't using Tracer, but then my module loading won't work. So, yeah, I mean, this is a little bit, and I think we're getting almost to the point where we're not going to have those issues, but you're going to want to keep coming back and looking at that. Good call. That was interesting. That was worth the little adventure. All right, so go back to here. Were we still on a question of yours, or were we going to?
No.
Okay. Promise example. And I'm honestly, I didn't quite get as far through promises as I wanted to for this, but so we've used Q a little bit. So we have a defining a new promise. We can have a resolve and a reject. It's very similar, exactly like Q would be. Set timeout return. Promise do async. So it's going to. Yep, I don't have the promise fully understood yet to where I can explain it, but that's what it looks like. Somebody else wants to take a shot at it.
Is there an all feature as well?
You mean promise?
There is a promise.all.
Promise is a keyword?
Yeah.
Uppercase promise.
Yep, that's a part of the ES6 specification. So no more Q, no more third-party libraries if it's supported. And there's a lot to learn on promises. There's generators as well, and iterators. Huh?
Generators are big.
Yeah, promise generators. There's yield within a generator. So the example that I've seen on that one is if you're running through a record set and you want to do chunk it at a time. That would be a good one. Promises, though, promises normally is just to get rid of the nested promise hierarchy.
It's like
Also,
JavaScript.
what's that?
Generators are like JavaScript.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, maybe well, promises we can get back into too when we do TypeScript. And so maybe we'll go a little deeper into promises because we need to definitely understand those well, but maybe we'll do that from the scope. I think I'm almost positive there is a promises.all too. It's basically just instead of defining another function that's a callback function, you're doing a promise instead. But the advantage you have of a callback function is there's the reject, and so that gives you some capability. And you can't, a callback function, once you give another process or another remote API a callback function to call you back to, they could call that more than once too. And so like the one example they gave actually in the Node Summit last year was if you're doing a refund type system and you're calling the credit card company to give a refund, and all of a sudden they end up calling you back like 5 times, and so you could, whereas promises give you more control over that. It's only going to be called once. So, but yeah, under promises,
Can you paste
that was a promise.all. I knew that was a promise.all.
Can you paste that target example directly in the console?
Yes. Promises all.
I just found out you promise all the list or whatever I'm using.
Yeah, it won't let me. You could if you could get it. If I view source and I could grab it, but yeah.
I was thinking the one you did.
Oh wait.
Before.
This one right here, or a different one?
No, the example you did before where you had a target. You couldn't do it because.
Oh yeah, we could probably do that. And I could probably do that one too. So if I do that instead, that was in our class. Thank you. So this one, and so if we go there, and I can grab all of that, which might work. And then let's go to our index page. And let's just comment out tracer. And so now we're running just straight browser. And we'll just be messy and paste it all in there.
Oh, I was just thinking, just pasting it right in there in the console. Yeah.
It worked. So that's running straight Chrome, no support whatsoever. And so when we print out that, it's need our target, right? Yeah. And so it's actually printing it out. And if we, yeah, it does. I thought it was only going to print the constructor. That's interesting. Yeah, and so I don't know. There might be areas where you want to get into it and be able to see what's going on there. With the new.target, do more just to let you know it's there, which is about where I am in the process. So, yeah. Any other questions, comments? Was this helpful at all to get some insights into some of it? Yeah. We're just learning it too. So I would love to turn it, if you know anybody who is like a rock star expert in TypeScript and wants to come lecture next month, that would be awesome. But assuming that probably won't happen, even though I did put out a message, we got 800 numbers people signed up on the Nova Meet. I don't know how many people actually read any of the messages that come across. But considering that probably won't happen, even if we put out a request like that, I'll put out, now, do folks like this process of just going through and seeing stuff? Yeah. And so I'll try and do that too with the TypeScript stuff, like maybe a week and a half ahead of time before our July meetup. And then if other folks want to look at various pieces and we can, play with little things, I could throw this up on my GitHub account too, so you could download it and play with it a little bit. If any folks really want to get into it, then it would become a little more interactive in here. It doesn't have to be just me. Thank you for pushing us along a little bit by your presence. Hopefully it's helpful, and hopefully we can get to September and we can all be developing Ionic 2 apps. That would be awesome. With TypeScript and Angular too. Good.
Can you post the plural site, exact plural site classes that you?
Yep, I'll put the exact plural site in the, and I'll post it up as a message as well with the slides. I'll make the slides public.
Because Ionic 2 gotta be backwards compatible with Angular 1? Are they gonna force people
I
to?
don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't even.
Did, we skipped last month, you, something, NG conference got on last month?
Yes.
Did you participate in that, or?
I watched a bunch of the videos. They have 100% of their videos online.
What conference?
NGConf,
What is it about?
Angular 2.
Did they
But it is
talk all
the
about
kind
it?
of conference right now. That's probably, if there's one conference all year I'd love to go to, which I don't like going to them anymore, is NGConf. A lot of just outstanding talks about Angular 2, and they get deep into a lot of stuff. Like there's web workers is an interesting concept. JavaScript is single-threaded, which means it only uses one processor or one core. So like on a phone like this, which these have like 8 cores on the chip in here. But if we run a JavaScript app or on a server, you're only using one of the cores. And so there's talk about, there's really, I don't know that there's an easy way to make the event that pushes the guts of the JavaScript VM to run on multiple cores. But one interesting approach they have is to have a web worker, which is basically spinning off a separate JavaScript process, which is with its own event loop. And then you would have your main JavaScript app then just doing your UI and waiting for UI events and stuff like that. And then all the logic, which you could take really almost 80–90% of an Angular app and you can put it into a web worker. So anything that you have in your services, you're doing your core logic and all that kind of stuff is running in a separate process, another core, and that should make, it will make the UI that much more responsive. And theoretically, you could have a number of different web workers, but even just having one more, you're doubling your capacity, and you're dedicating them one core to 100% user interface events, which should be nice. And so they go really deep into NGConf. They're very excited about it, and I like the approach they're taking. They're trying to find a way for web workers under the hood, and you'd want those two web workers to be very decoupled. And so you don't have rich communication between the two of them. So you're really dealing with like almost like a socket type connection back and forth between the two. And they want to hide all that for you and say, all right, if you write your Angular 2 app this way, maybe with a couple more annotations in TypeScript, they're just going to take care of setting up the two web workers and the communication between the two, and it'll just all work. So that kind of stuff's very exciting.
And is it completely different? Angular 2?
It's TypeScript. I don't know. It's, honestly, that's why I set up this 4-part series. We're going through this process too, and so I really am committed to getting to September and being able to answer that question. And hopefully a bunch of us can do that at the same time. My feeling is that when I looked at TypeScript, it looks fairly different to what I'm used to.
The demo is really different.
Well, but all the Angular 2 demos are written in TypeScript.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I read or I watched a video from a while back. It's like they got rid of controllers.
Yeah. Yeah. So they are trying to get rid of controllers, and controllers are glue code, and
That's really just.
controllers are really the bane of our existence. So I'm wholeheartedly into putting everything into services, or having a back-end service. Well, they have something now that takes the place
Like
of a
a
controller.
like a completely different sort of.
But you really can find a
Dependency
class. Your controller can become a class, and
It sounds.
2 months will be there. So we'll go through TypeScript. So we're laying the groundwork, right? So hopefully this month makes TypeScript next month a little bit easier for us to dive into. We'll learn the new pieces of TypeScript, and then we can pull up some basic Angular 2 apps. And hopefully we can dig right into it and pick up those concepts, and we're just kind of peeling back the onion. And then the Ionic 2 is just icing the cake. But it's really cool. If anybody's interested in Ionic 2, I really am so excited about.
Look at the Angular 2 demo, it's gonna like shake you.
This is the Ionic 2 site, and if you go to the components here, you can go through all these things, and they have a nice little iOS version of it over here. It shows you, so that's what it looks like on iOS, and this is what it looks like on, you know, the material design, which is right. And you can even do Windows now if you want to too, for that 2% of the market that's out there doing. But they've got like this date time. You know, the one we do with retirement planning, dates are important. You know, when you're born, when you want to retire, all that kind of stuff. And that there's really a bunch of crap out there. There's nothing good for doing dates out there. And these are just very nice, elegant, clean. That's not bad at all. And if you try and go look in for a date, Without that, it's painful. Even the native apps are painful. So they had that one. And so there's just lots of stuff in here that we're very excited about. Plus, just it's going to be cleaner, more productive underneath the hood. So we're going to drive hard. Cool. Almost 9 o'clock. Appreciate everybody coming out and sticking around and the rain. Hope it was helpful.
There was really no rain out there.